So today is January the 6th, and if you've been paying attention to the news, there was quite the spectacle that happened in Washington, D.C. today in regards to January 6th. And I've got something to say about that. Some of the speeches that I didn't listen to them because I'm not going to subject myself to that stuff, but I did read the transcripts. One thing that really kind of struck me or had an effect on me was when the vice president said that January 6th was just like 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. On September 11th, 2001, almost 3,000 Americans died. The city of New York was virtually destroyed for months. Pearl Harbor killed 2,400 soldiers and sailors, destroyed the Pacific Fleet, making our Navy inoperable virtually for years. I don't know how long it took to get the Pacific Fleet back up and running. January 6th, 2021 was a day. It was a bad day. It was a day that a lot of people did some really stupid shit. There were a lot of people that committed some crimes and some acts of violence that I'm not going to make any excuse for. Nobody should be making excuses for what happened on that day. My problem is when you compare what happened on that one day to these other days in history that, 50 years from now, what happened on January 6th is going to be a footnote in a history book. What happened at Pearl Harbor changed our country forever. What happened on September 11th changed our country forever. And then the other thing that I want to point out is not only am I seeing politicians in Washington saying things, but I'm also seeing local politicians saying that, January 6th was an attack on our democracy, attack on our way of life, and all this other crap. Well, what were those politicians saying when there was an attack on democracy happening in their own cities? If you want to look nationally, what was Kamala Harris saying? The Vice President of the frickin' United States. What was she saying when, for months, from the last week of May all the way up into August, in almost every major city in the United States, there was mayhem and riots. These cities were all under siege. The State House for the state of Ohio, I know this because this is where I live, in the city of Columbus, was under siege. People took trash cans and smashed out the windows and charged into the buildings. They lit historic theaters on fire here in Columbus. In other cities across the country, there were federal courthouses that were under siege for months on end. The response from some of the very politicians who are today saying that this was a day, they're comparing today to Pearl Harbor and to September 11th. The response from those politicians was these people who busted out the windows of the State House in Columbus, Ohio, the people who were throwing fire bombs and Molotov cocktails at the federal courthouse in Oregon. What they did for them was they donated money to funds to bond them out of jail and to help them avoid criminal prosecution. When the city of Columbus was under siege by rioters for more than 2 months, there was one politician, Joyce Beatty. She wasn't down there telling them to stop doing what they were doing. She was down there when people were told to get out of the street and they refused, and an officer went to effect an arrest. She was there swinging at an officer. She wasn't taking the high road. She wasn't denouncing the violence that was happening. She was participating in it. when news organizations and law enforcement agencies were saying, hey, our nation is under siege from Antifa. The politicians who stood wherever the hell it was that they stood in Washington, D.C. today and gave these bloviating speeches about how our democracy is under attack. When law enforcement agencies across the country, and I'm a law enforcement officer, and I was one of those people saying this thing, when we were saying that we're under siege from groups like Antifa, they would give you this smart ass look and they would say, Antifa is not a thing, that's an idea. An idea isn't something that throws Molotov cocktails at you. My buddies and I had to stand online in the middle of the street for months on end, and we had rocks, frozen water bottles, and explosive devices thrown at us for months on end. The anniversary for, what, May 28th, 2020, that day came and gone, not a single speech. If these people really gave a damn about protecting our democracy, they would stand up every time democracy's under attack. They wouldn't just use it as a political device to try to rally their base so that they can get votes, because they're, whatever the hell else they're doing doesn't seem to be working. So those are my thoughts on January 6th, in case anybody was wondering. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.